In this section, we'll take a detailed look at the tile interface. In the first video, we'll take a look at the main tile interface and see all the options available to us, as well as briefly going over tile animation. In the second video, we'll take a look at importing and setting up a tile set within GameMaker Studio 2. During this process, we'll look at how a tile set actually works in terms of its creation and setup so that we know why they look as they do. In video 3, we'll take a look at tile brushes, the ability to create predefined sets of tiles that we can use as brushes to paint them into our rooms. Finally, in video 4, we'll take a look at auto tiling, an incredibly powerful feature that helps take out the grinding work of placing tiles manually into rooms. After all this, we'll have the knowledge to create our own tile sets, use tile brushes, use animated tiles, and use auto tiling to create the visual aspects of levels in our games. So let's get started. In this video, we'll look at the main interface of tiles and the options we have available to us. We'll start with the main tile properties, and then take a brief look at the editors, including the brush builder, tile animation editor, and the auto tiling editor. We won't be using the tools in this video, this is just an introduction so we know how to navigate the interface. To start with, in order to access the tile interface, we need to either open an existing tile resource or create a new one. To create a new one, we can right-click on the tile listing in the resource tree and select Create from the drop-down list. We can now see the tile interface. As we can see, it's comprised of two windows. We have the main interface containing an option to link a sprite, and then some options to open various editors for tiles. By default, it opens with the tile set properties window open. This is the most basic level of tile setup and also the most important. It's in this editor where we tell GameMaker the size of each tile in the set, define any spacing, separation, and border sizes. We can also set the texture group for the tile set, and finally tell GameMaker to include or exclude the tile set from the usual texture pages. We'll cover the main inputs in the next video, but let's take a look at the Disable Source Sprite Export option. This option tells GameMaker not to include the sprite being used for the tile set in the normal texture page options under the assumption that any sprite being used for a tile set won't be used for anything else. If we intend to use the sprite for any other things aside from the tiles, then we uncheck this option and the sprite will be added to a texture page as normal. Now let's take a look at the brush builder by selecting the brush builder option from the main tile window. The brush builder is where we can create preset brushes out of the tiles in our set. This essentially allows us to create predefined combinations of tiles that we might be using often, and then use them as a brush to paint the tiles in our room with. We'll cover the process of making a tile brush in video 3 of this section. Let's move on to the tile animation interface by once again selecting it from the main tile interface. Welcome to the tile animation interface. This is where we can define animations for tiles. Typically tiles are static, but in GameMaker Studio 2 we can actually define animations for them. The reason to use tiles for animation is because sprites have a slight processing overhead due to the way they're rendered and their bounding box properties. Tiles are faster to render, but are limited in the sense that the animation length must be a power of 2, must all be contained on a single tile sheet, and must have the same animation speed on a per tile set basis. To create an animation, we start by selecting the Add Animation option, and we select the amount of frames for this animation, and we can then begin to select the tiles to add as the animation frames in order. As we click, we'll see the squares fill in with the selected tile. If we made a mistake and wanted to change a tile, we could simply select the frame and then select a different tile. Let's move on to the last section, the auto tile interface. Just like before, we get there using the button on the main tile interface. The auto tiling feature is incredibly powerful as it allows us to create auto tiling libraries which basically automate the selection of tiles when placing them into a room and allow us to simply paint them down in the shape we desire. We'll cover this in more detail in video 4 of this section. In this video, we went over the tile interface and familiarized ourselves with its components and sections. We learnt the basic concept behind each feature of tiles and are now ready to learn more. In the next video, we'll take a look at importing and setting up a new tile set.